In the deep dark, the Aslan are moving, but there is a darker power. There is something behind the claw.
Welcome to episode 4 of Behind the Claw, a podcast looking at the classic Traveller RPG. A second email has wended its way to me, and this one from Mr. Lloyd, who suggested I take a look at some websites that have something to do with classic Traveller. He's also suggested I talk to you about how to structure scenarios, or at least how I structure my scenario planning. And I think that's all good refereeing stuff and well worth including, so thank you, Mr. Lloyd, for suggesting that. And now on to our first segment. I have no idea, so computer, what can you tell me about this place? My Galaxy is a segment where I spotlight one of the planets in the Tercesso subsector and give you an overview of the planet. A subsector map and UPPs can be found on this show's website at behindtheclaw.blogspot.co.uk. Renesso is a human-populated world. It is of average size and with a breathable, if dense, atmosphere at sea level. The surface of the world is predominantly, 80%, covered by ocean. Although the oceans are extensive, the depth of the water is relatively shallow and rarely exceeds a few tens of metres. The planetary population, currently around 5 million, is restricted due to the severely limited land mass. The current technological level of the planet is such that they do not have the capability to create floating cities. Renesso has suffered a technological relapse that has lasted for many generations. Currently, they're capable only of steam-powered manufacturing and power systems, although it is well industrialised within these restrictions. Although the planet sustains a well-used starport, this predominantly serves the agricultural export that sustains this planet's wealth. An epoch of religious fervour recently ended, and in its place an administrative oligarchy has risen that welcomes and accepts the technology that was rejected previously. However, they restrict the general import of technology, especially advanced weapons, as this threatens their own rule. Precautions should be taken for your own safety should you leave the environs of the starport. Local guides and guards should be employed in order to not run into problems. The planetary flora and fauna is noted for a complete lack of poisons and toxins. This is because the planet was terraformed in its ancient history and all animals were introduced latterly. The food exports from Renesso are marine-based, as all land-grown produce is consumed locally. The food products produced by Renesso are known more for their protein content than their taste, as nothing exotic or peculiar to Renesso actually exists.
No way. The way I heard it is that he was shipping arms, guns, taking them straight in, under the Navi's nose.
And so to our story seed, or scenario seed if you prefer. This is designed as a mercenary ticket, but having said that, it could easily be scaled back to be handled by a smaller party. On a middling technology-level planet, there is a problem that will present to the PCs as a bug hunt. The planet, which we'll call Cartane, was colonised thousands of years ago, and as such an old civilization, it has a rich and highly coveted past. Archaeologists are still working to rediscover the cities and artefacts from thousands of years ago. The finance for these archaeological digs comes from those with a genuine historical interest and from certain corporations that seek to mine the artefacts either for sale or for lost technologies. The capital city of Cartane has always been the capital, and as such, many of its buildings are ancient and have been given legal protected status. Walking through the capital can be a surreal experience at times because of the strange mix of ancient and modern. Beneath the city are ancient sewers and 3 or 4 different transportation systems that have become disused over time, and all of which have been given the protected status. Of late, there has been a series of disappearances and grisly deaths. This has led to a lot of rumours and superstitious fears about the tunnels. After the first few local police entered the tunnels and never reappeared, the locals are now too scared/superstitious to deal with this problem, and thus they come to the mercenaries. What the locals either don't know or are in denial of is that a cult amongst their own numbers has risen that worships the ancient past and has been reborn and has taken to these tunnels. They're now actively defending the tunnels and extending them. They have brought an alien species, alien to Cartane anyway, in to assist them. The creature is an animal, is intelligent, and is viciously loyal to its masters and terrible to behold. They chose these creatures for the fear they will inspire. They've bred a small army of these creatures and set them loose to wander in the tunnels, but only the cultists are safe from them because of a special scent that they carry in a vial worn around their neck. There you go. That should be enough to get you started.
No, sir, you may not dock here.
What the hell? I just made 3 jumps to get here.
Without Permit 7C, you may not dock. Now move out to the holding line at 6,000 kilometres.
Okay, it's time to talk about rules. Or more specifically, the white elephant that's in the classic Traveller room. Traveller is known for its ability to kill characters during character generation, and a few misconceptions have grown up around this. For example, I've heard people blaspheming and saying that it's not actually true. Can this be? I asked myself if it was actually true and how people would have such a misconception, so I've done a little research. Let's go back to Book 1, which was published in 1977, and here's what it says about the survival roll that you make during character generation. Survival. Each term of service involves some danger. During the term, a character must successfully throw his service's survival number to avoid death in the line of duty. Each service also has DMs which may apply. Failure to successfully achieve the survival throw results in death. A new character must be generated. Well, there you go. That's pretty clear. It's laid out. Your character will die. So that's what basically turns character generation into a mini push-your-luck type of game. When I checked the version of the rules printed in 1981, it was pretty much the same. However, Mercenary Book 4 adds some detail to this rule, but you still die. Here's what it says. Survival. Most activities involve some danger, and some accidents in training occasionally cause fatalities or injuries. To survive a unit assignment, a player must roll the indicated number or higher on 2 dice. If the indicated number itself is rolled, the player has been injured or wounded. So with that change of rules, suddenly you have an option to be wounded, not just killed. But High Guard is just as lethal. And Scouts Book 6 seems to add a little leniency into the system by adding the following rule. If desired, the optional survival rule may be used. The character leaves the service immediately and does not count the current term of service towards mustering out benefits. Wow, so there's the first point where you don't necessarily have to die during character generation. Book 6, part of the original 8. Merchant's Book 7 also includes this optional rule. So that's how it is within the Imperium, but what about the alien races? Looking to the Aslan book, it mentions that you can use the optional survival rule that we've already looked at, but doesn't tell you what it is. It's rather odd. It's a serious oversight, really, for this alien book. The Kukri do away with the survival rule altogether. This is because, as a race, the weaklings don't survive, so if you've created a character, it's obviously going to be a strong one. The Varg, obviously being the best race in the universe, return to the core rules, where survival kills. Now, with the danger of sounding a bit judgmental, the Zodani book does use the weakling's optional survival rule. The Droin, the Droyen, however you want to pronounce it, have the optional rule to survive, and even to continue with an additional continuation roll. The Solomani are obviously quite weak because they use the optional survival rule as well. Hivers, too, use that optional rule. The Darians don't use the optional rule, and considering their background, that's not really surprising because Darians generally don't survive anything. So there you have it. Characters generally do have a chance of dying during the character generation, unless they're Kukri. It seems, according to the originally published rules, that they did have the intent that you could die, and I wonder what their rationale was for changing that. Personally, I like the idea of death during character generation. It's not because I'm particularly morbid, but because it makes the choice about re-enlistment into a real one. If you have a character that survived a few terms and you want to try for more skills, it becomes a real push-your-luck choice, with the rewards being balanced against losing everything.
Ah, damn piece of junk! Who bought this anyway? No, don't you dare say it was me.
It's time to have a look at another product, but this time not from the core Traveller line itself. This time I'm taking a look at Raphael Chandler's The Starship from Hell. This is not Traveller specific, but it is a 44-page PDF which you can buy from Drive-Thru RPGs. What it does is contain a series of random lists which allow you to build a ship, a scenario, and the characters that are going to be on that ship. All the lists are presented as story-based ideas rather than being stat-based. There's 2 sections for ship generation and NPC generation. You start with your ship type. Will it be colonial or scientific or something else? What about the ship's category? Is it an attack vessel? A medical vessel? And the choices you get here, the results from the table, will boost various attributes of the above section or type of ship. You also can select a ship's class, such as Harvester, Dreadnought, and merge that with all the roles you've made previously. There's also a little ship name generator. You can also create the passengers that are on board this ship. There's also a list of strange phenomena that take place on or around that ship. There's also a section for different types of distress signals, which can set up a situation your characters need to investigate. There could be distress signals, threats, or even secrets being broadcast. The section for NPCs allows you to select names, titles, ranks, traits, roles, and factions within the people that are on board this ship. There's no guarantee that the people on the ship would all belong to one mindset, so obviously you could have factions. And the reason this is a ship from hell might well be because of these factions within the crew or passengers. It also gives you a list of locations on the ship, and some of these are not very Traveller-like, but a little modification and you're good. There's also a list of special possessions, things that might be on the ship or being transported by the ship. So, as you can see, this PDF is basically an idea bank. I found it perfect for inspiration. It could be gonzo, the results, but that's up to you. Basically, make a series of roles, look at the ideas you've been given by that, and mash them together, and you can produce a scenario, or at least a ship that comes from hell, that your characters can, scenario-ize, perhaps is the word. To be blunt, this PDF will not give you a Traveller scenario. What it will do is give you the ideas for creating one, though. Make a series of roles, perhaps once on every table. Then start thinking about the results that's given you. Discard the ones you don't want, throw away the ones that don't fit the Traveller universe. But you're still left with the core of what's going to be a very scenario-like event. Perhaps this ship is out of control, crashing towards the planet. Maybe it's cruising along perfectly fine and doesn't care about what's happening outside of it, but it crashes into your ship. Basically, you can do anything, and there is a massive bank of ideas here that you can pick and choose from. Frankly, I thought this was a very good PDF, especially for the low price. You can get it from Drive-Thru RPG, and it's well worth a look.
Did you hear that? What the hell do you think it is? Is it dangerous?
This is the creature catalogue, and today we're taking a look at the Nyarshian, commonly known as a stegobear. It's a strange creature, native to the world of Durain. It's an air-breathing animal that resides in the cooler, even icy regions of that world. A normal adult of the species weighs in the region of 250 kilograms. It's covered in brown fur, often with a shaggy look. The creature molts constantly, and the discarded fur is collected and hoarded for nesting material by the females of the species. The animal has large forepaws with formidable claws, which it uses for digging and for fighting. Its rear paws are much less well developed, giving it a rather strange, unbalanced look. The animal lives a predominantly subterranean life and excavates extensive tunnel systems that can sometimes hold large family units. Where human areas and Stega bear territory cross, there is rarely a happy cohabitation. Although the creature does live predominantly under soil, when it comes to the surface, it's found to be aggressive and is easily capable of killing or mauling an unarmed human. Although slow, it is immensely strong and can do a considerable amount of damage to any human structures it finds within what it considers its territory. It is more often than not necessary to eliminate any Stega bear nests that are too close to human habitations. Some attempts have been made to domesticate this mighty beast and to use it to defend farmsteads against other fauna. However, this has always gone badly, and the beasts are now considered too wild to train. This is a new segment that I'm calling On the Nets, and this is where I'll point you to some website or review some website that I found on the interweb. When I'm thinking about an upcoming game session, I like to relax and to listen to music or at least some kind of inspirational sounds, ambient type stuff, of the appropriate theme. It helps to put my mind in what I call its flow state. It allows the ideas to come through. Now, to that end, I've come across a rather nice piece of free music that I'd like to pass on to you. It's an ambient album that has a nice science fiction feel about it. I found it inspired thoughts of the deep dark and of entering the jump when I was listening to it. The album is simply called Ambient and was created by Dimension, and you can get it on the Internet Archive at the following address, which I'll put a link to on the website. The URL is archive.org/details/DX_ambient. As I've said, I'll put a link to that into the website sidebar, which you'll be able to find at behindtheclaw.blogspot.co.uk. I'm now going to play to you about the opening minute or so of the first track from that album so you can get a feel for it. I'll also add track number 4 to the end of this podcast after the end titles. My God, sir, they've launched a missile. It's tracking.
Have they now? Don't fret, Thane. I've got something special to handle that. Lancelot, activate my special defensive feature.
And we've now arrived at the special feature segment. Today I'm going to talk about structuring, or at least preparing for a scenario. My heart was gladdened when another email flooded into my inbox this week from Mr. Lloyd, who suggested I chat about structuring a scenario. So here goes with part 1. The last campaign I ran ended up as a mercenary campaign. The heroes were playing the leadership of a mercenary company. This left me with a bit of a situation. If I teased a pre-written scenario, they might not bite. They wanted easy money, and they would happily turn down an offer for a pre-planned adventure if the money was too low or the risk was too high. So I adopted a list strategy for the between-mission sessions. I brainstormed a whole series of possible missions, only writing a single line down to describe each one. And then, when our session started, I could introduce an NPC as the hook for the mission. They'd go through an interview preparation process and decide if they wanted that job. If they bit, good. If not, I'd move on to the next NPC with the next job. This process gave them the maximum choice for their characters and their business. They could accept a smaller mission and only send a part of their force, or they could take a larger mission and send all of their force, or indeed turn a mission down completely. I'd not written out each of these missions as a fully planned scenario. After writing out the single lines, I did spend a bit of time listening to some music and coming up with ideas for opening scenes or little problems that could be overcome during the first few incidents on that mission. It was basically just enough to finish the session in which I was presenting the job offers. It was only after that session that I would start planning out the full scenario, all the details, the sandbox, if you will. I'll go into how I actually plan out a sandbox scenario in one of the future episodes of the podcast.
Thanks for the trade, Tuchel. It was a pleasure doing business with you. So long, sucker.
And so we've reached the end of another podcast. I've actually been thinking about including some flash fiction in the show, or at least trialling that. If you have a piece of Traveller flash fiction that's 500 words or less, and like to hear me narrate it, please send it in and I'll take a look at it. If you have any thoughts, suggestions or questions, again, please send them in to me. You can email me at behindtheclaw@outlook.com. Remember, stay tuned after the end titles if you want to hear track number 4 from that ambient album. That's all for now. This podcast is released on an attribution non-commercial no derivatives license. Its home on the web is at behindtheclaw.blogspot.co.uk. Music by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. I'm your host, Felbrigg Napoleon Herriot. Thanks for listening. Prepare for jump.